So what happens, right, on the page, there's a lot of comments that come on your Aqeedah video, on other videos, and I just want you to clarify some of this stuff because people don't understand basic Aqeedah issues, right? So, I'm gonna read you some comments from. Remember we did the video with Sister Kalani?
That's the girl from Philly.
The girl from
the
Philly.
young one.
The young one.
Uh huh.
Right. So remember when we did that video, and the whole point of it was, you know, the imam that, you know, kicked her out of the masjid or whatever because she started ripping him on Aqeedah points, right? And so a lot of people, they were coming on the comment section saying that she was wrong. Not about her stance about yelling in the masjid or nothing, but they was trying to say that, you know, people were arguing that she's teaching deviant Aqeedah anyway. They were saying that the Ash'ari Aqeedah is some philosophical mumbo jumbo type stuff, right? What's the basis for that? Like what? Like so, people know that it's actually authentic and that this actually is this, what the Prophet taught.
Just look at it this way. In a simple way, Imam Ash'ari, rahimahullah, he died in the year 324 after Hijrah. So, according to the ones who say that, he is at the end of the time of the rightly guided predecessors, the Salaf. Okay.
How so?
He died
for dummies.
So the first,
This is Aqeedah
so
for dummies.
the first, I don't call them dummies.
No,
but,
for real, for
okay,
dummies.
right?
Don't
I
call
understand.
them
I see your point,
Yeah.
right? So let's say the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "The best of the people, or the best generation, is my generation. Then those who come after them, and then those who come after them." Right? So that's the first 300 years in general, right? So whoever lived among the scholars of that time, learned people, they're considered the learned people of the early Muslims, who the Prophet said was the best of generations. So everyone who's a Muslim, that's what they're looking to follow. All right, so with that being said, he's from that generation. Now, so he did teach. He was a living person. People followed him. His creed is not an ambiguous creed. It's well known, and millions of Muslims throughout the ages have followed his creed. Then you have a group who claims today to follow that creed, and they have the creed of the Salaf, the early Muslims, and they have a creed that is different from what Imam al-Ash'ari and those who followed him conveyed. That's why they say that. So in reality, the job of people is to learn what was the creed of Imam al-Ash'ari and how do you confirm that, and then distinguish between both and decide which one is right. Not just saying things like, that's wrong, right? Which is wrong to do that without actually learning.
So I'll read you one of the comments, right? So this is a comment from when we did the first Aqeedah video we shoot. That was 2018, right? So this sister says, Astaghfirullah. If Allah says he has a face, it's not for us to say he doesn't. We shouldn't envision or try to put an image on what Allah looks like because we could never encompass that. Now, explain to her how or what.
Okay. Number one, simple. The Quran is in the Arabic language. So what Allah revealed in the Quran is always in the Arabic language. Allah revealed that in the Quran, that he is attributed with al-wajh, right? The word wajh, W-A-J-H, right? In the Arabic language. That word can bear multiple meanings in the Arabic language. Some of those meanings befit Allah as to be said about Allah, and some of them do not. Among those non-befitting ones is the word face in the English language as we literally understand it. That's not befitting to say about Allah. Because face, in its literal meaning, is a limb, an organ, and Allah is not attributed with organs. So if we want to say what she said properly, you should say Allah attribute to himself a wajh. He has a wajh, and we don't know the reality of that. And this is befitting and fine. But to say what Allah looks like is a description of a body. And that is something that is impossible to attribute to Allah. That's it.
No, so then, because that's the part where a lot of times you have conversations with other Muslims, and then when they bring the conversation up, and they say things like, all right, Allah says this is never comment. Allah says that He exists on the throne, and we don't explain the meaning of it. We leave it. But
that's an explanation, though, right?
Exactly.
What that person just said, Allah said He exists. You should say above the throne. So then you would ask, where does Allah say that? They'll go to a verse, right? Surah 20, verse 15, for instance, which in Arabic, Ar-Rahmanu al-Arsh istawa. And you translated that. That translation is an interpretation. It could be right, it could be wrong. So the fact that you don't realize you just did what you say we don't do is a problem.
Yeah.
You just did it. Because Allah did not reveal that. You translated that, and that's what you understood. But if you want to say what Allah revealed, it's something different. And then if you say Allah revealed this, and I understand it to mean this, then it's a different conversation. But you just took your translation and projected that on the words of Allah.
So what's the proper way to believe in Allah?
You believe that Allah revealed in the Quran attributes, and we believe in them that they don't resemble creation as Allah intended them to mean. And that's simple. That's the easiest way for the common person without going into unnecessary details. If they get that point, then you can go into another say, well, in the Arabic language, this word can mean this mean this is befitting. Now we're getting complicated. Simple. Believe what Allah said about himself as he revealed it, and leave the reality of its interpretation and understanding to him, while declaring him clear of resembling created things. I don't know how more simple you can get that.
Well, then, all right. So then somebody else, they made the.
Now we're only talking about Allah. We're not talking about created things. We're talking about the Creator. If we're talking about created things, that's obvious what these words mean, because they're actually applying to created things. But now we're talking about the Creator, and we cannot make an analogy between the Creator and created, right? Yeah. I think that's the problem. Any person who says that, if what I just said, they won't disagree. The problem is that they're being fed something as if this is the Quran and Sunnah. And if you disagree with that, you're not following the way of the early Muslims. But the problem is what you just conveyed is not the Quran and Sunnah. It is your understanding of the Quran and Sunnah. So we're not going against the Quran and Sunnah. We're opposing an incorrect understanding which we believe of the Quran and Sunnah. There's a big difference between the two, if you follow what I'm saying.
Exactly. So when we had those earlier videos and we were talking about not attributing direction to Allah, because essentially that's what the sister Kalana was saying in her video. That was her argument. Like, yo, don't say Allah is above or up. So then, of course, somebody came with the in one of the comments, they came with the hadith of the slave girl who said to the Prophet that Allah, and she pointed into the sky. Does that debunk what we're talking about?
No. But now you're going to get complicated.
Yeah, get complicated.
Right? First of all, that hadith has multiple narrations of the same story. And those narrations, they actually contradict each other. One narration says, whereas Allah and she pointed to the sky. Another narration, she spoke. Another narration, she mentioned the Shahada. There's different narrations. And all of those narrations, right, cannot be joined, right? So in the knowledge of hadith, such a narration cannot be used as an evidence for creed. It's not a proof for creed, right? Nor is it mentioned by the narrators in the books of about belief, in the hadith book. So that hadith related by Imam Muslim is not mentioned in the book of faith. It's mentioned in other books. So even him, he didn't narrate it as a point of issue of tenets of faith. So, and then if you talk about the hadith, it could bear other meanings besides in heaven, right? So why you didn't take the other interpretation? Why you took that literal interpretation? Which doesn't match the belief of the majority of the Muslim nation, right? So I'm just saying, without getting complicated, this is like simple one-on-one.
So the majority of the Muslim nation, because we try to explain this multiple times too,
Right.
You know, exactly what we believe. Allah is a creator and everything other than Allah is a creation.
Right.
Then of course they bring up Ibn Taymiyyah and they bring up, you know, these books, you know, can you speak on that?
So what I'm saying is, like, are we talking about, excuse me, the issue of belief, or are we talking about individuals? If you're talking about individuals, then you got to weigh the individual according to the correct creed. But first you got to know the correct creed, right? Ibn Taymiyyah, who died in the year 728, is not a proof of the Salaf. He didn't even live in the time of the Salaf. So if we're going to talk about the beliefs of the Salaf, why don't we talk about people who were their students, whose knowledge was closer to them, like Al-Imam Al-Bayhaqi, right? Who died in the 5th century. He wrote a book called Al-Asma wa Sifat, which is name and attributes. And in that book, he said that Allah exists without being in a place. He's mentioned it. So he was early in Ibn Taymiyyah. Why we neglect Al-Bayhaqi and accept Ibn Taymiyyah? Ibn Furak, who was the student of the students of the students of Imam al-Ash'ari, he said Allah exists without a place. Abu Mansur al-Baghdadi, who died in the 5th century, right after the students of the Salaf, he said Allah exists without a place. That's part of the hiccups. I don't know what you want from me.
Grab a juice.
Right? Boy, this is nice. I get a free juice. So when we look at all of them, all of those scholars, they mentioned that. And they were closer to the Salaf in terms of, so why we mention Ibn Taymiyyah, not them. And there are many of the scholars who said that who weren't from the Salaf, right? Who were from the time of the Salaf. Imam Abu Ja'far Tahawi, from the Salaf. He said that Allah is not contained by the 6 directions, as is the case of the other created things. He died 321. He was from the time of the Salaf. So why we highlighting an opinion of Ibn Taymiyyah, who was 400 years after the Salaf, and those who were right close to the Salaf, who had a complete different creed, why we don't accept them?
So what was the story of Ibn Taymiyyah then? So why did he just, because he didn't believe that the whole time, right?
Ibn Taymiyyah, he had a conviction that he believed, and which was that Allah is in a direction and in a place, and he got that from earlier people who were doing right after the time of the Salaf in Iraq, which we call al-Mujassima and Mushabbiyah, people who attribute to Allah with bodily attributes, and they resemble Allah to His creation. And he followed them and he renewed their ideas. But in the time of Ibn Taymiyyah, the scholars of his time, they didn't accept that. And he actually was put in prison, and he died in prison for his convictions, for his opinions, by all scholars of the four schools.
Back then that was called heresy, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so you could actually get...
But they didn't go that far with him. They just imprisoned him so it doesn't spread. So Ibn Taymiyyah is not a bar by which we set to know the belief of the Salaf. He's not from the Salaf. Right? And so if we're going to take his claims, we got to evaluate it with other things and then determine. I think for with us, as people, we got to get beyond slogans and get to actually learning. Right? Like this slogan, I'm down. No, do you know what you're talking about?
Oh, so you mean, I follow Quran and Sunnah.
Right, it's a slogan.
It's
a slogan.
It is a slogan, and it's a cult. So,
dang, man, that's all you.
That's it.
Yes.
Yeah, it is on me. So, all right. So, what qualifies you to say any of this? Who are you?
Well, it's not that I'm qualified. I research, and this stuff is available. I mean, listen, I done the work. I done the research.
Yeah,
I
know you did.
Right.
I'm saying, so for people that's watching, what qualifies you? Who are you? You're Imam Amin from the barbershop. That's what people
Imam from the barbershop.
No, seriously, but they don't know.
All right.
Who you are, who you studied with, where you went to school.
Yeah, but that's irrelevant. Here's important. Yeah. I have an unbroken chain of this knowledge, which is more important than that, from many scholars from all over the world, from Arabia to Yemen to Syria to Egypt to Pakistan, India, Africa, scholars that I met that are connected from scholar to scholar to scholar, all the way back to the Salaf, all of them who convey this with an unbroken chain, with scholars, with the books. That is what qualifies me to say what I'm saying.
Back to the Prophet.
Back to the Prophet.
So this is what's called Isnad.
This was called Isnad.
So explain it.
So
people know.
In Sahih Muslim, in the introduction, there is a statement, Imam Muslim relates that knowledge is by narration, chains of narration. And they said that one of the great scholars of the Salaf, his name was Abdullah ibn Mubarak, he said the chain of narration is from the religion. And if it wasn't for that chain, then anyone can say whatever they want, which is the case of those who are talking about Ibn Taymiyyah. They don't have a chain to Ibn Taymiyyah that says the same thing they're saying. It's broken. Yeah. If you take that scale and I say, okay, let's talk to the person who says Allah exists without a place. Allah exists in heaven. Give me a chain of scholars unbroken to the Prophet who says that. They will not be able to produce. Which should tell you something. I say, okay, give me a chain of scholars unbroken all the way back to the Prophet who said that Allah is literally above his throne, which they're claiming, right? Give me one chain that you could produce. You will find when you examine their chains that there are scholars in those chains, the majority of them, who taught that Allah exists without a place.
Okay, so what's going to happen now, you watch this video, and all underneath the comments, there's going to be copy and pasted hadith.
Forget the hadith, I didn't ask about that.
Exactly.
Hadith needs a chain.
Exactly.
Right? So my question was, produce from the person to the Prophet ﷺ a chain, and all of that chain is people who said that Allah is literally in heaven. You will not find, and they didn't say Allah exists without a place. Right?
It's impossible.
It's impossible. Okay. We're saying the opposite is very easy. It's too many of them. All of the chains have people like that.
So then everything in the...
I'll do one better.
Go ahead.
Give me one chain to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam where all the people of the chain said, I'm Salafi. Give me one. So let's go back to Sahih Muslim. If it's not for the chain of narration, anyone can say whatever they want. So if you can't produce it, be honest and say, well, it doesn't exist, but we still believe we right. Okay. I mean, then one can accept that or reject it. But you don't have a basis for it. That's your opinion. At the end of the day, you're entitled to that. But don't make that as if that's the religion, because it's not. There are other things. If you follow my point.
I get your point. I
So,
just want
right,
people
that's
to
what
watch
I'm saying. So these are not things that we can't substantiate. We can. And it don't got to be about ego. See, forget the individual. We got to get out of that. Like this celebrity who's the proper speaker and everyone's trying to support their ego has nothing to do with what we're trying to do. At the end of the day, this ain't true because Amin said it. It's true because it's true, right? So whether it's you or me saying it, or what we saying, can it be substantiated? Can it be checked? Is it true? Yes. All right, then it's true. Whether I say it or not.
And so, but that's one point I was getting to. The way that you check anything in the deen is through Islam.
Of course.
Yeah, so that goes for wudu, that goes for salat, that goes for the Quran, that goes for...
Any way we do an act of worship should have reached us through some kind of chain.
Exactly.
Anything we do.
Exactly.
And if it's broken, then it doesn't mean it's necessarily wrong, right? Mm-hmm. It means you can't rely on it. Mm-hmm. Because it is not confirmed, right? Now, especially when you're talking about a belief that by the vast majority of Muslims historically has been rejected, and that's problematic. You follow what I mean? Like, it was a time for me where it didn't matter how truthful and confirmed something is. It's just that if I think it's right. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't work for us, right? Like, nah, is this correct? Mm-hmm. That's what we need to be looking after. And that takes a little bit of work, but we have enough. We're not in the same condition we were maybe 40 or 50 years ago as a community. We have some knowledgeable people. We can actually check this stuff. We got people who actually have learned. We got people who know Arabic. We got people who like from all what we can actually check. Why we keep doing like we can't? We can, right? So a person says, I study hadith, right? Okay, then you can do the work. All right, so if we're talking about hadith, right? We're talking about hadith, then we can say that the knowledge that we need to know about these chains of narration is available. So if someone studies, even if the one who's making the claim is not qualified, others are qualified to check it, right? So let's examine these chains. Do we have a chain which everybody was Salafi to the Prophet ﷺ? You can check that. That's not like something that's hard to do, right? Did all these people, were there any Ash'aris in the chain? Because they said the Ash'aris are deviant philosophical group. Do we have a chain that there are no Ash'aris in it? Or Maturidis, that same as Ash'ari? No. So that means that your claim is not connected. It's a broken claim, right? So even from the person to Ibn Taymiyyah, you're not going to find people who have that belief, right? This is available and it can be checked. Of course, it takes a little work, but we got people qualified to do that work. Even if me and you ain't the qualified one, someone can do it. So we can actually check that stuff. So especially in the time we live in, a fact finding.
So for the person that's a layman, right? A layman should have a teacher, right?
Right.
Should have a teacher that follows a method, right?
Exactly.
Right. Why? Because here's my point. Because when I met you, I had been Muslim already for probably 6 years or so at the time, right? 6 or 7 years. So I met you, and I had all these other people telling me before you no, you don't follow method. You just follow the Quran and Sunnah. You just do this, you do that. And then when I met you, when you said, because people always taught me that following the method was like a sect and that was a cult and all, all that nonsense. And then when I started learning from you and from other people that follow methods, and then understood it was like a methodology, and pretty much most of the methodology is consistent across each method. So
Right.
talk about that. Why is that? Like, that's where a person should start then, right?
We accept that in everything except the religion, right? You know, I joke all the time when I come in the bar shop. I see kids, I say, let me cut your hair. What do they automatically say?
No.
No.
Yeah.
Why?
Because you're not a barber. Yeah.
Right? But they don't know. I might get cut hair, right? It's possible that I could do a good job, right? I'm just not a professional, but it's not impossible that I could do a decent haircut. It may not be like a professional do it, or someone who's skilled, who learned, but they automatically reject that. Why? Assuming I don't have the skill set, right? And even if I could do a good job, they're not gonna take that chance because they're not comfortable that I've learned. Same thing. If a person says, let's speak for us as Americans, right? You don't know Arabic. So first, you're not even reading the Quran and the Sunnah that the Prophet ﷺ was revealed to him or that he spoke. So that's a deficiency in and of itself, right? You don't even know the language. So you're not even interpreting from the language. You're interpreting from a translation, and maybe the one who translated wasn't that good himself. You won't ever know his mistakes. So you're at a disadvantage. Now, you're going to take that disadvantage and you're going to make all the rules of the religion based on that? No one would accept. That's worse than me cutting hair, right? That's just factual. Like, you can't argue with that. Like, you don't have the skill set to do it. So what do? Like they do. Not gonna let me cut hair. They're gonna get you to do it. Cause why? Because you have the skill set. That's it. It's like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's simple and easy. The person who follows a madhab, you're not following just an individual, you're following qualified scholars who got the skill set, who know all this stuff we're talking about. And you trust that they are qualified to do the job based on their skill set, their credentials, their learning. That doesn't mean that how many people you know went to barber school and can't cut to save their lives. That doesn't negate the need for the barber school. Exactly. Right? So you can't just say, oh, well, some barbers, they got a license and they can't cut. That doesn't mean that you become a barber now. It's still qualified barbers. That's an analogy I can give to make it simplistic. But if we're talking about, now we're talking about that over 1,400 years, right? 1,300 years of scholarship. That's a lot of history of that. Because they think like a madhab, like that started yesterday. Madhabs was in the first 150 years after the Prophet ﷺ. They were established schools, even before that. Established, and they come all around the world to today. You're going to skip all that? And every madhab has that chain of narration.
Well, I think though people get confused though too, because even on this show, I had an imam that said, I asked him, I said, what do you say about, people follow method? And he said, no, I don't think you don't need a method. And and what happening, people you hear this all the time. They say you follow the method if it's right in accordance with the Quran and Sunnah. You take what the method says and then you put that up against the Quran and Sunnah, and if it's wrong, you follow the Quran and Sunnah, not the method. When I try to explain to them, the method is the Quran and Sunnah. You know what I mean?
But here's the thing about it. You telling somebody that. That's assuming that the person you telling that has the skill set to do that.
Yeah.
When not only the one who you telling that doesn't have the skill set, nor the one who's telling you that has the skill set. So that person who's telling that person that They themselves don't have that skill set. I don't have that skill set. So don't think I'm talking about like putting this one down and putting me up. If I sat with the person who said that, we sat down, no pride, no debate, just brothers kicking it, and see if they have that skill set, what you think gonna be the result?
No, I agree.
No, I'm saying no ego tripping. Do you, from you knowing just me, do you think that person gonna walk out of here talking about something I'm qualified?
No, of course not.
It's claims.
Yeah.
That's just like me and you sitting here talking about cutting hair, and somebody coming talking about I'm a top-notch barber, and you know what it takes. You're gonna pick them apart as soon as they touch up the clippers.
Yeah.
Because you know what it takes to be a skilled barber. So the guy, you're like, you don't even know how to hold clippers. What are you talking about? You can look at somebody the way they're holding clippers and you're going to tell what mistakes are going to happen. You right or wrong.
Absolutely.
Just look at it the way they hold the clippers. He going to make some serious errors. Just the way he's holding the clippers. But the non-specialist may not realize that, right? So the problem is we've lowered the bar so much in religious qualifications, which we don't have. That's a crisis, right? But we can't remain like that. You know better, you got to do better. But when we make it a celebrity contest where it's about everyone coming up, and you know us, I'm going overseas and be learning, I'm going to be the sheikh. No, you're not. Even if you study for 10 years, you still ain't going to be the sheikh. It takes longer to be the sheikh.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's a point that we got to understand.
What about taking pictures?
There's a difference of opinion among the scholars. So I don't think that's an issue.
That's an issue.
What I mean, because it's scholarly difference. So even at the end of the day, those who speak forward have their reasons why. Those who speak against it have their reason whys, and no matter what.
Against it. What about those? What's the
So the simple, the scholars who said that photographs are reflection of images, and they don't have the same meaning as drawing a picture. Simple. Which is true. Was photographs at the time of the Prophet ﷺ?
No.
So if you say it's haram, based on what are you saying that, your deduction of what the Prophet meant, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in terms of something that didn't exist. How did you apply that ruling to this? He was talking about that. You went it over to that.
Yeah.
It's two different things. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's why there's scholarly difference. Because had it been something explicitly, there wouldn't be no scholarly difference. There'd be consensus that pictures are unlawful. There's not.
Now, one of the things that, one of my teachers said, I don't want to say his names.
Right.
But he was telling me, he said, you got to remember there's context too. And he said, at the time, he said, if, he compared it to when Prophet Musa went up into the hills, right? And he said, you walk away for a minute, you come back and worship a cow, he worship a picture. He said, that's why he was saying, and he wouldn't say that's the only reason, but he was saying, he said, that's not necessarily what we're dealing with today.
Right.
The part that pisses me off with doing this, right? So,
and guess what? That is a legitimate reality, even if he's wrong in this specific case. Yeah. Even, I'm not saying he's wrong, I'm just saying his point is true. Even if in this case it's not applicable necessarily, but the point he's making, we got to understand context.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Things can always be taken out of context. So context is important. And it relates to the final ruling. And that's why you have difference of opinion in cases.
But that's what killed me with this. So we do this, and I do these videos. I ain't trying to be no scholar or nothing, right? But this is just for people that have
basic people,
stuff, right?
Yeah.
So it'll reach the people that don't know who to talk to, don't know who to ask questions about.
Right.
But then I get these dumbass comments, right? And multiple people complaining about that picture of Malcolm X up there. You know what I'm saying? But it's you got pictures and so my response always be, you're on YouTube though. You know what I'm saying? Like, how are you complaining about pictures and you're watching YouTube? How you complain about music and you're watching YouTube? Like, what are you talking about? How should you get off of YouTube and just abstain from the whole world?
Context. That's what you know what I'm saying? Like if you ask the person to say, why is that picture of Malcolm X haram? If you hear their reason, you'll see that person knows nothing about Islamic law, rules. They know nothing about hadith. They know nothing. And it's not expected that they know. Mm-hmm. The problem is we got in religion with us is you got non-professionals trying to do professional work. Mm-hmm. Right? Look at it from that side. Scholarship is a profession. Knowledge of hadith is a profession. Like, even if you don't get paid, I'm talking about, and people get paid sometimes for expert. We can't take expertise out of these fields and put them in the hands of anyone and act like you're an expert and you're equal with an expert. I mean, I'm not saying don't read hadith. I'm saying that doesn't make you a hadith scholar, right? I'm not saying don't read the Quran. It doesn't make you a Quranic, scholar. And know that while you're reading hadith and really, you know what I'm saying? That you still need expertise. Yeah. And I'm telling you, you know what you should do? One day, come to the masjid. It's fixed up now a little bit. And just go look at the library and video it, right? And walk around. Maybe we could do it together when I get back. We'll walk around and I'll just point out different books and different subjects. So we can kind of see what access scholarship involves, some of it. That'll change a whole outlook. You know what I'm saying? Like, we look at things and we just see the end result and we don't know what it takes to get there. Yeah. I just see you got a barbershop and you cutting hair. I don't realize all the work that you put in to get where you at. Yeah. No one sees that. They're just like, I could do that. They might not even be able to do what you do to get here. Yeah. Right? I mean, I'll get me a barbershop. Yeah, but what about the mentoring process? What about the apprentice process? What about all the stuff I had to put up when no one would even let me cut their hair? They forget all that part. They don't even know about it. They just, man, he think he like that. Yeah. No. Listen, for me to have this conversation I'm having with you, for me, it was a 30-year background for this. 30-year background. And in each stage, learning different things till I get to understand where I'm at today. 30 years, right? Now, someone else can learn what I learned in 10 years or 5 years, right? But you ain't gonna learn that overnight. So you may be a smart guy with all the access and everything set up, and it may take you, say, 5 to 10 years to learn what I understand, right? Now everything gotta be laid out. I have a student, let's not mention him, you know who we're talking about. He's a graduate from Al-Azhar University, right? And the stuff he don't know be like sometimes boggling me, right? But he don't have my experience. And he gotta remind me that all the time. You've been doing this when I wasn't even born. Yeah. So there's going to be some gaps. Even though I'm a sheikh, I don't have that experience, right? So the guy could come out of school and was nice, head of his class in the barbershop. When he step in that chair and sit next to you, it's gonna be a vast difference, ain't it? Exactly. But he was the leader of his class. Got all the accolades, went to the top barber school. He's, went to New York and did some stuff in the fashion, in the industry. But when he's sitting in that chair next to you, it's gonna be a vast difference. He may know some stuff that you don't even know, but his skill set ain't gonna be like yours. That's the same analogy we got to give ourselves with the religious rules, but with way more things involved. So that person who just says, you know, I'm reading Quran and Sunnah, it's just not that simple. I mean, it sounds nice, but in no way. And you got people that been Muslim sometimes 5 years. That's as long as they've been Muslim, 10 years. I ain't talking about studying, I'm talking about that's how long you've been a Muslim making that statement.
Yeah.
You've been a Muslim for 10 years. You ain't even experienced being a Muslim long enough, right? To be exposed to knowledge. Yeah, you've been a Muslim for 10 years. Around in a country that is not an Islamic country, right? Like, what do you expect? So it ain't putting you down. It's just, it's not possible.
No, you're right.
If we be honest, but if we're sitting around people who are not honest with us, yeah, go ahead and shake. Like we hearing our thing shake. It's thrown around like it ain't nothing. Until you be around a real shake, you realize you ain't no shake. I mean, it's a nice encouragement, but you're not a sheikh. This is what a sheikh needs to know. Not only knowing it, we don't even know what the sheikh need to know. Yeah. Forget about knowing it. We don't even know what they need to know. That's the average one of us, right? So that's the dangerous, to me, that's the danger of, if you want the real danger of the Salafi movement, is that. One of our teachers, he wrote an entire book on this subject. He said that not following a madhab is the most dangerous bid'ah threatening the Islamic law. That's heavy. And still to this day, we don't realize how heavy that title is, right? Another one in Egypt, he wrote an article about this. He said, not following a madhab is a bridge to not having religion at all. Yeah. Wow, that's deep. Like those two titles, right? Because in the reality, what you're doing is, you know what I mean? Like, stocks, right? You've learned it. If a guy can't start investing money without learning, what's going to happen to him?
You're going to lose your money.
Like quick.
Real quick.
That's what we're doing in religion. We just invest in our stuff without learning about how it works, right? And now you don't need all that. If you just a praying Muslim, you pray, you follow. You ain't making legal rulings. You ain't trying to say what's halal. You're just trying to practice your religion and worship. Then all you need is a teacher who's going to show you some basic and stay in your lane. And I think a lot of times we don't respect lanes. We always cross the highway, jumping over the median, everything. And that's our problem. And Allah knows best.